Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Good Times Hour. All right, B, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, please welcome to the tee our next special guest. He's the Frisbee phenom with world titles in freestyle sorcery, and the world knows his name because of his next level coursery. He's fleet-footed with a style rooted in tight lines to swinging tune times that drove the judges wild. With Mrs. Ample, he gave the world a taste of the ample gifts this living legend puts on display. And there hasn't been a single day that he hasn't consecrated his way to the rare sight of a perfect flight. He's the head honcho and main proponent of the Texas Rancho movement. And he's the one who brought us a new millennium and a perfect and clear circular skies over the republic he holds dear. And his new venture is you can act like a nerd and play disc golf in a vineyard where skies are wide for you to wine and disc on a dime with no risk at all except your hyzer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man who's been helping to keep Austin weird for more than 40 years, and the best thing to come from Buffalo since those wings made us all sing, John Houck.
Wow. Can we just end it there? Thank you, Paul. That was wonderful. And it's great to be here. Brian, good to see you. Paul.
Yeah, without a doubt. Thanks a lot for joining us.
It's been a long time, Mr. Bellier. It's very, very good to be with you.
Really awesome to see you, sir. Definitely in doing all this research, it was just I go such a deep dive and I feel so closely connected that feels like the time hasn't passed at all since the last time I was.
Well, it is amazing. I did catch a good chunk of your show with Levon, and so
nice.
At some point I said, he really digs deep. Do I really want to do this? But whatever you got is great. And before you sign off tonight, Paul, I did a little digging. When I was doing my own research, I inadvertently dug something up that I think you guys will find interesting. So
nice.
Let's make sure we get a minute for that. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Sounds great. Exciting. Sounds great. All right. Well, let me get going on the framework, and I'm going to run down a lot of everything that we're going to try to cover. And if we don't make it on this one, we are having John back for our Designers Week coming up this next year. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but that will be a week where we feature all kinds of course designers, probably at least 5 of them. And give them a chance to talk about a considerable amount of stuff. So he's designed more courses than anyone alive. Is that true, John? I don't know if that's true or not, but you got to be up there in the running.
I believe it is that Solo Designs is now north of 130. So as far as I know, that's true. And we always added the word alive because I didn't know how many Ed had done,
right.
But I don't know that Ed did 130, but anyway, I think we're good the way it is.
All right, that sounds good. Some of the most challenging and breathtaking tracks on the planet, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a living legend. We're going to talk about his origin story and freestyle. We're going to talk about Circular Skies over Texas tour. We're going to talk about World's Biggest Weekend, the Great Holes of Disc Golf Series, National Doubles, Millennium, and disc golf ranches if we get to it. If not, we'll take that up on the Design Week. And as always, we will finish with 20 questions, which is something that we're still tuning up, and it's definitely one of our favorites. So in addition to all that, it can't be overlooked that in addition to you being the mastermind of all of those things I just went through, you're the dynamo behind concepts, incredibly original ideas, and you're just really recognized for being a member of the PDJ Hall of Fame class of 1998 with Greg Hosfeld and Carlton Howard. And that's the first time I didn't cuss when I said Carlton Howard's name in the last 10 years, just because, his middle name is G, F, and D. So anyways, and you're also a member of the Frisbee Players Association Hall of Fame from 2020. And you're one of only 3 people that have the distinction of being in 2 different Frisbee Hall of Fames, World Hall of Fames, I guess is the proper term in that situation, correct? Or do you know who the other 2 are?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's actually, we thought that was true, and then we found, I think at least a couple more. So
Oh,
disc golf and freestyle, Crazy John, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're putting me on the spot. This should, oh, and Stork.
sure.
But then if you go to Ultimate,
Right.
you get Stork for 4. You get Jim Kenner, who I believe is disc golf and ultimate.
Okay.
And I think there may be one more.
Is
So
Westerfield? Maybe Westerfield.
I don't know that he was much of an ultimate player, but honestly, I don't think he and I ever actually crossed paths. He was geographically, we weren't too far apart.
I
But
think he is in the FBA Hall of Fame.
oh, in the FPA Hall of Fame, you know what? You're probably right. You're probably right. Yep.
It would be really great to be able to get him on the show as well, because obviously me being in Toronto, we want to tell some Toronto stories, but his impact and you know the shadow he's cast in the game is just you can't diminish that or get around it. Anyway, sorry, Mace.
Yep.
Continue on.
Nope.
Well, I have one more thing to add there, and that's that you were also inducted into the Texas Disc Golf Hall of Fame in 2017, along with Dave Taylor, Nolan Grotter, and Steve Howe. And that wraps up the framework.
So let's just dive right into it. We can only depend so much on the internet, but according to the interwebs, it says that you were born in Long Beach, but you moved soon, I guess, to Buffalo. You grew up in Buffalo, spent your formative years there. And certainly Mace, the first question he asked me was, what drew your family from Huntington or Long Beach to Buffalo?
I mean, that's almost corner to corner. It's not quite, but it's close.
It is very close to corner, and the correct question would be, what drew us to Long Beach? The answer is my father was doing his medical residency at that time.
Oh, okay.
So his residency was in Long Beach. I was born there, and I think I was 6 weeks old when we drove in whatever kind of car my parents had at that time, probably with no air conditioning, across the country back to Buffalo. So maybe that has something to do with the fact that I've always been comfortable with long drives and traveling around the country, because I got an early start.
That might have something to do with it. That's pretty good. That's a great one.
So you started playing disc sports in 1975, and certainly by the time you were in high school, you, amongst the many activities, you were into disc sports there. What do you remember? What got you? I mean, Frisbee was in the world. It was in the zone. You couldn't fall over without seeing. I mean, Frisbee was basically, I think Ed came on board at Whammo soon after you were born. So your life is wrapped up in the lifetime of the Frisbee, as it were. So what do you have a particular story of what brought you into the Frisbee world?
Well, I have a very early, very clear memory. I was probably in about 3rd grade, and I was playing catch with a friend. I mean, maybe it was a Pluto platter, God only knows at this point, but he threw it to me, and I decided not to catch it because I just thought it was so cool to watch it hover and come down to the ground. I was just fascinated by it. So I guess it's kind of the opposite of how a dog learns to play, right? Because you throw it to a dog and it lands on the ground, they pick it up and bring it back, and one day they go, oh, maybe I'll just catch it out of the air, right? I was like, I'm not even going to catch this. I just want to watch it. So I was hooked on that pretty early. And I remember right around 1975, used to play with some friends in the summer, particularly in high school, probably with a master at the time. And we learned about ultimate. So we played, 2-on-2 ultimate if we could get 4 people together. And that was a lot of fun. And I remember very clearly also at that time teaching myself how to throw a sidearm by throwing my master at the garage and picking it up and throwing it again. I just kept, until I got it right. Of course, now you can teach somebody to throw a sidearm in 2 minutes, but it probably took me about a week to get it right. But those were, yeah, those are early memories, and I
Wow.
was pretty hooked pretty early.
So when it says disc sports that you played in high school, was it just Ultimate, or were there other games that you?
Well, yeah, we played Ultimate, and I remember too, during breaks between classes, we had a quadrangle at our school, and we would line up 2, 3 people on one side, 2, 3 people on the other side, and you would throw it, and the game was the first guy would tip it. If there was a second guy, he would tip it, and then the last guy
Wow.
would, right, and then throw it back, tip, tip, catch, tip, tip, catch. And I remember being at a party at one of the guys' house during the summer, and somebody throwing it to me. We're probably into a super pro by now, and being able to tip it like 5 times and then catch it, and I'm like, oh my god.
So
The
then you were hooked on
things, the
freestyle.
things you can do with a frisbee, right?
Right.
I mean, it was just so exciting and so new then, and
Well, those
yeah,
legendary instructions on the bottom of the disc: play, catch, invent games. You know, it's almost
absolutely.
like spontaneous combustion all across North America. Anybody with those frisbees, I mean, there's only so many things you can do with the frisbee, and we all, not we, but many people all kind of invented these things at the same time. That's
Yeah,
pretty wild.
yep, absolutely.
So now I know, I was doing the research. I see that, and also looking at the PDJ record, which, by the way, the PDJ has done an amazing job in terms of archival preservation. However, there are huge gaps and holes in the official Frisbee record, and I'm glad that they've got some events. They show to World Championships in Santa Cruz, but according to the literature, how you got to Austin, you were there for the World Freestyle Championships. You came down in '82. By that time, you were already well versed in, you already had a bag of your own frisbees, but you arrive in Austin for this big tournament. Prior to that, had you been playing freestyle tournaments?
Yes. So my first tournament was just after high school. It was August of 1978. I think it was actually a week before I went off to college. And it was the Western New York Flying Disc Open, I think is what we call it, or the Western New York Disc Open in Buffalo. Back in the days of Keith Armstrong and Tom Rooney, Rob Seidenberg, all these guys in Buffalo. And so that was golf. We used chicken wire baskets, right, that you had to put into, and if you hit it on the side, knock the basket over, you'd have to put it back up for the next player. Distance, MTA, freestyle. I remember I freestyled. My partner's name was Eric Raitt, is a friend of mine from high school. And I had learned how to nail delay, like a week before that tournament. And he hadn't learned yet. So he would throw it to me and I would spin it for a couple seconds and try to catch it behind my back or whatever. So that was the start. And since you mentioned Toronto, I don't want to tell the whole story because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but
Nobody's listening.
we had good point. We had a couple youngsters, couple brothers came down from Toronto, and a guy named Paul. Well, we called them the A guys. One of them turned out to be one of the greatest disc golfers of all time. He's in the Hall of Fame, and I still have the original big sheet where all the results were on there from all the events, because it was an overall tournament where we tallied everything up, and I beat this Hall of Fame disc golfer in disc golf at that event. Now, I was 18, he was 15, maybe had something to do with it. But yeah, those were good days.
So last year about this time, we had on our show Wayne Kahn. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet Wayne, but he's an old school freestyle and disc golfer from that time too. And he was this golden haired, toe-headed gentleman we're talking about here. He remembers that guy coming onto the scene when Wayne had kind of been already installed, and just, the thing about the precocity of young people, let's just say.
Yeah, no, he was clearly very talented. You might say, kind of a prodigy. And Anyway, great guy, and there's I think one of two world disc golf champions that I've beaten in my career, in casual or, well, in this case, big time tournament play.
So you moved to Austin. Was that your first time in Texas, going down there for that tournament?
I went down there for the tournament, which was at the Aquafest. Those were unbelievable days. Chris Baker was putting them together. He was just inducted into the Freestyle Hall of Fame for these incredible events. I mean, 20,000 people, bands all day, skydivers. I mean, it was unreal. As part of the Austin Aquafest, right down at Auditorium Shores on the river, and so that was a stop for the World Championships there. And then we continued going to tournaments the rest of the summer. And at the end of the summer, the guy who was the world champion at the time, Donnie Rhodes, had moved to Austin from Pennsylvania. And he said, I need a partner. And we can make a living traveling around the country doing demonstrations. So come on down to Austin and let's drive all over the country doing freestyle shows. And I was fresh out of college. How could I turn that down? So
Wow.
That's what got me to Austin.
How long did you do that? How long were you making a living doing freestyle demos?
Well, he and I did it I guess 82 and 83. His fiance from Sweden joined us at some point during that time. She was a national roller skating champion and a junior figure skating champion, something like that. She was really natural at freestyle, and their goal was to perform together in Las Vegas. So at some point, she kind of took my place. It was around the same time that I decided to go into business for myself. So that was 84. So it was really probably 2 good years of being all over the country, doing fairs and malls and spring flings at colleges and other schools and half times of basketball games, that kind of stuff. So it was,
nice.
Yeah, but we were full-time Frisbee guys.
So in 80, that business you started in 84, was that Circular Productions?
Yes, it was.
Wow. I didn't realize it. Yeah, 30-year anniversary coming up then.
Oh,
40.
yeah. We're all over that. No, you're right. I need to talk. Yeah, so Circular Productions was a DBA since 1984. When Dee joined in 1987, I think, she made it officially an LLC. So it's been Circular Productions LLC ever since.
Well, now before we dig to, because the freestyle record, it's obvious we need to talk about that. And I really, one of the things we've done with this show is to try to bring together the different disc sports. We don't want to just talk about the silos. But before we get into the freestyle part, one of the areas we're always interested in is the story of your PDJ number.
Yeah. So I've been saying for the last couple of days that you've probably done more TDing on your PDJ number than you've done playing. And I think it's fair to say, what's the ratio, like 100 to 1 or something like that?
Oh, well, let's see. During those days, and I've been researching the last hour or so, going through back issues of Disc Golf World and Disc Golf World News, and found myself in the results of a few tournaments, but mostly in the list of tournaments that were coming up. I mean, I was doing Circular Skies Tour was 8 events. We were doing 2 events at Waterloo every year, 2 events at Bartholomew every year. We were doing a mini at Zilker once a month, world's biggest, all that stuff. So, I mean, I was, if you include the mini at Zilker, which I just got a reminder, in 1987, it was in Disc Golf World, we had 99 players at a mini at Zilker Park on a 9-hole course. I don't even remember. I think we would have people play 18 and then another people would play 18 and then they'd both play 9 or something like that, but 99 people in 87. So, and I was probably playing, yeah, I mean, 5 to 8 tournaments a year, in addition to TDing, 30 or 40. But then when you go later in my career, I'm probably still TDing 10 or 20 events a year and only playing 1 or 2. So, but that did strike me when you said that. And my first reaction was that can't be, no, I think he's right. So Mace Man nailed it. I'll give you credit.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe
Okay,
not
so-
100 to 1.
So
Go
what,
ahead.
so, but, okay, so the other part of the question, what prompted you to get your number? And what's the story basically behind all that? Why did you do it? And
Well, I saw, as I said, your show with Levon, and I know that was a big deal. And he, I guess, was with Monroe, and Monroe had the $10, and Levon didn't because he was a
Yeah.
starving college student, as we generally were back then. And so, he has that regret that he didn't get single digits, and I get that. The important thing is not that he was, double digits or triple digits or whatever it was. That the important thing was he was there, he was doing it then. And so, your number shows that you joined during that era and you were involved. But I've always thought people make a bigger deal out of that than they need to. So my number is 1688, and I honestly don't recall when I did it or what the circumstances were. I know, these days people are impressed with that kind of thing, but it's just a number. The important
Sure.
thing is when you were there and what you were doing. So
Sure.
well, I agree
All
with
right.
that too.
thank you, and I'll try to make up with other stories for not having, because I know that's like kind of your thing now. So
Well,
Well,
I
it's
hope-
just funny how many people come up with it. I mean, even
oh
Captain
yeah.
Snap the other day, Michael Conger told me, he goes, man, it was just the same story as Levon. I could have got it so much quicker, but Ed wouldn't, float me, and I didn't have the money. And, and it's just like, I mean, I was like, man, everybody we taught, you're like one of the first people. You may be like the second, if you're not the first, that doesn't have that story.
Well, for me, I'm interested because this goes back to my days working in the PDGA office with Brian Honegger. I was the one prior to online reporting and all that. TDs would fill out in paper, pen and pencil, the TD reports, send them into the PDGA office, which was this small island office in a person's house. And I was the data entry geek. Who was
Oh,
entering
that
everybody's-
was you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I just
Wow.
I would see people's and the database we were using, I think it was custom built for the PDGA by somebody, and so it wasn't fancy or anything. But I remember anytime you'd enter a PDGA number, I guess for a search, you could see a list of, I could scroll up and down the list, and it would strike me, oh look, these people have wow, they're similar numbers. They must have got it at the same time. So it was for me, honestly, it was just always one of those interesting.
You were probably extra appreciative this year that Steve Gans was elected into the Disc Golf Hall of Fame, because he's the guy who really drove us forward into the computer age and people being able to
That's right. I remember them talking about that at the induction or at the announcement.
doing the reports online. I mean, honestly, there's probably a box in our storage in Dripping Springs somewhere where I have some handwritten TD reports that they're, why didn't John ever turn that in?
Right.
So yeah, that was a lot of work to fill out those reports by hand, and obviously
For sure,
a lot of work for you to turn them in.
So,
but yeah, no, it's great that the PDGA is going back and somebody is now getting those old reports and putting them into So I actually, I think in the last couple months, I saw that my lifetime earnings went from like $135 to 168. So I'm like, okay, keep finding more reports. Let's push me up.
There's hope for me too, then.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no hope for me. I've never cashed in a PDG.
Not yet.
Not yet. There you go. See, I'm waiting until I'm 60 or
There
at least
you go.
59, and then I'll just take them all by surprise.
There you go.
So let's go to freestyle. This is one of the things here in Toronto. Freestyle has always been a pretty percolating, strong community here in Toronto, but in terms of official events, there's been a real paucity of anything for a long time. And just this year, Brett Schramek organized the Toronto Jam, and it was nothing, there was no competition or anything, but a lot of the best American players came up just to jam. And it's right in my neighborhood, right down the street in the park here. And for me, I'm becoming more passionate about freestyle, not as a player, but just as an observer, and certainly as a historian of the sport. We go back to the first games and the first disc, and then from there it all branched out into separate subdivisions and specialties. But I really appreciate the art of just throwing the frisbee, and I want to show. Do you have me able to share the screen?
I do.
I want to show. It's too bad because in terms of your legacy with freestyle, John, one of the things that they talk about is your elaborate choreography and your movement, and that's why I made reference to that. But in the terms of the freestyle video that you have up of your 1984 win with Gina, apparently you say that we can't see the video because Facebook won't allow it.
I know the last time I put it on Facebook, they took it down because of, copyright violations with the music or something. I think it's probably on YouTube somewhere, but.
So here we go.
Oh, look at that.
So there's Gina and John's running in, and it's too bad we can't hear this because one of the things that, as I said, that they talk about is your elegance with the music and the timing. What song, by the way, were you jamming to?
We started with a little Billy Joel, and so it was kind of up tempo, and then we went a very slow James Ingram and Patty Austin. How do you keep the music playing? And it had a big. It was a big deal for us. In my mind, I think that was the first routine where every move we did had a musical cue, and we really hit it. And look, this was, if I'm not mistaken, Gina's first tournament. She did every move that she knew in this routine, and she killed it. We had one drop, which there are very few no drop routines back in those days. And she became, some people would say at some point she was the best freestyler on the planet. So it was a great honor to play with her. We practiced very hard. She was a new student at UT, and that was I was starting to get a little choked up. It was amazing. I just felt like I floated off the field after that. It was a career highlight for sure.
Well, nice. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's beautiful to watch you guys play. And by the way, is that from the '84 World Championship victory?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That looked like the finals at I believe Nokomis Park in Minneapolis.
So you and Gina have been awarded the Decade Award for FPA Best Mixed Pairs in the 1980s. You also have another world title as a co-op. Talk to us about what co-op is.
Co-op is 3 people. I think technically it's 3 or more people, but very early on, people realized that four people got a little awkward. So freestyle is always in pairs, open pairs, mixed pairs, which is what we did, or women's pairs, and then co-op is 3 people. And there's a real interesting trivia question having to do with this. My partners were Skippy Jammer and Joey Houck, a member of the JH Club, by the way. I'll put this out there for any historian or anybody who wants to challenge it. I think JH has more world and national titles in disc sports than any other set of initials. Thanks primarily to Joey, who has like 20 world freestyle championships, Judy Horowitz, who has like 5 million US Open and national titles in different events, my two, and eventually Jim Herrick won the World Ultimate Championship. So we threw him in there too. But anyway, Joey was on this incredible roll where he won co-op for four or 5 years in a row with two different partners every year.
Wow.
So Gina and I won in 84. Somehow I showed up without co-op partners in 85, and Joey and Skippy said, come on, and we won it. And I mean, there were some amazing co-op teams at the time. So that was we had to perform at a very high level to get that win. And you know what happened several years later, well, now national doubles championships, Scott Stokely.
Yes.
You know where I'm going? Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. I was thinking about it too.
Scott Stokely had a run where he won, give or take 4 years, maybe 5 years, with different partners every time. And I said, you're like the Joey Houck of disc golf. And of course, Scott is one of the few disc golfers who would understand who Joey Houck was. But that, you know,
everybody
that
else was like, who?
Yeah, that was
I think I remember that even.
That was an amazing feat too. And as long as we're talking about Scott Stokely, I don't hear people say this very often, but I think we're at a place in disc golf now where if you're not James Conrad, you are very adept at, you know, going forehand and backhand, and that never used to happen. I think Scott was the one who opened that door, and people saw, you know, the potential of it. And I think he's really the one we need to credit for steering disc golf in that direction.
That's a really good point.
It is a good point. I mean, everybody on the Pro Tour pretty much, except for James Conrad, has all those tools in their bag at this point. And
right. And thank God for James Conrad. I mean, there are plenty of times if I'm out playing around with friends and I throw that turnover backhand and they're like, John, you know, why don't you throw the flick? I'm like, would James Conrad throw the flick?
Nice.
I'm glad he's there, and I get to invoke his name pretty regularly.
Well, just before we leave the freestyle section, I just want to know, you dwelled on the JH connection, which is really an interesting footnote in history. But the other point on that triangle was Skippy Jammer, the legendary Skippy Jammer, the one who
absolutely
all the certificates for the FPA Hall of Fame. Like, he is to freestyle what Ed Hedrick is to disc sports, isn't he? Is that too hyperbolic to say?
You know, I never thought of it that way, but other than Stork, who's like the, you know, God, meaning this in a nice way, the godfather of every disc sport. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be hard to make a case that there were people who were a whole lot more influential than Skippy. And of course, you know, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, he is the prime mover. And you know, at my induction ceremony, he came up to me afterwards. He said, "John, you know, this lasts our whole life." Yeah, you're like, there's no point in your life where you're not a Hall of Famer anymore. So anyway, he's a great guy. It was a thrill for me to be his partner and with Joey, and yeah, good. I think I'm going to go with you on that.
Well, so that brings us to Circular Skies. And obviously, you know, you already mentioned that Circular Production started in '84. And I didn't realize I didn't realize you went so far back. I mean, I knew you'd been around for a really long time, but I didn't know Circular Scars started back then. Was that how early did you start the tour then?
Well, I ran my first tournament in 1984. It was the Texas State Overall Championships. And we got the city to agree to let us do it at Zilker Park. So we set a temporary course up at Zilker Park for that first event. So at that point, I left Zilker up before. We had an 18-hole version. We were doing that twice a year. And I took over the Waterloo, the State Overall Championships, Bartholomew, all that stuff. The Circular Skies first year was 1989. And it was four cities, Carrollton, Austin, Victoria, and Athens. And the four winners, I think we had a guarantee at every event of at least $500 for first place, which, believe it or not, was big at the time.
Oh, people are coming from everywhere.
And then Steve Valencia, for example, and nobody talks about him anymore. That we need to.
He's coming on. We're having him on next month.
Are you really? Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So, and then the four winners would have a 9-hole playoff, winner take all for $1,000. And $1,000 was, pretty much unheard of back in those days. So it was kind of the first big regional tour at the time. We developed a very healthy rivalry with the Can-Am Tour at the time, with the great Dwayne Utek, who took that to new levels. And we had I'll never forget, and I want to give Dwayne credit for this. He of course wound up running Worlds in '92, I want to say, in Detroit. So we had the zebra was the first logo for national doubles, and
I remember that.
fish. All right, okay. Quick sidetrack. All those logos were amazing. All the world's biggest logos, Ice Bowl logos, national doubles logos, and I was so happy that the man who created all of those was inducted into the World Disc Golf Hall of Fame this year.
Kent Johnson.
Kent Johnson of Massive Graphics. And he did all the Circular Skies logos and Norman Pro-Am and on and on and on. I mean, he was amazing. He's a great guy. I love him. And I was really, really happy to see him get that recognition this year. Nice. So anyway, so we had the zebra that, was amazing, stuck out in everybody's mind, the double zebras. The fish was the logo for the Can-Am. So we made a t-shirt of a zebra eating a fish. Wayne, who I think had his own ad agency at the time and had incredible artists working for him, put an ad in the, I guess it was Disc Golf World or maybe Disc Golfer magazine at the time. Huge, incredibly drawn ad of a zebra with a giant fish hook through it. And so I think it was incredible. So, and I think some people thought, that we really had a thing, but it was all friendly rivalry. I love Dwayne, and
we catch bigger fish with live bait, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, those 3 years that he was involved with the Can-Am, we still call them. I remember when I first started coming out playing disc golf, Honaker would refer to them almost in like breathless, legendary invocation, call them the big Can-Am years. And we had all the California guys come to St. Thomas, Bamba,
yes.
and RJ and Steve Valencia, Stokely. So
RJ, yes, yeah, those were, and then there were the Pinniger was from up that way, right? And the early touring pros. Those were amazing days, and Dwayne did so much for the sport.
what's crazy is that you would nowadays, that kind of communication, that kind of flame war that would happen through memes, and it would be instantaneous, maybe on the same day. But you had to go to publications. So you had to go to
And
the
he had
trouble
to
of
wait
making a
for you to
t-shirt.
see that article too, or to see that ad too. I'd be like,
Right,
that-
right. So he probably submitted it a month before it was printed, and then it took 2-3 weeks to get to me. And yeah,
It's like playing
he
chess
was
by
like waiting
mail.
for the call for 7 weeks and was just like going, why isn't he called? Why isn't he called? That's good stuff. So there's two, since we're on a little bit of a time crunch because of Paul's memorial service that he's got to jump to at 9. I'm going to throw one thing into this that we were going to do later, but first I want to say, okay, what possessed you to run 2 world championships back to back with 1 permanent course, if I'm not mistaken, and 3 temporaries?
Correct. Yeah. Port Arthur on Pleasure Island. I when I started out, and I remember when I first designed Zilker around 84, 85, and I thought, maybe someday I'd like to run a world championships. And so give or take 10 years later, 94, 95, I believe I'm still the only person stubborn enough to have run Pro Worlds 2 years in a row. And that's when I really learned the meaning of the phrase, be careful what you wish for. Running Pro Worlds was a lot of work. And fortunately, we had amazing staff. We had an amazing place for it. Pleasure Island was an island that they created when they built the ship channel going through there. So a ship channel on one side and the Gulf, or whatever body of water that is, right there on the other side. There was a golf course that had been closed down, so we had 2 courses there. We had the permanent course, Barry's Treasure, and then Kisselpoo Crossings, which John Powell and I designed. John was the co-TD, and of course his wife Becky won her first world title one of those years, and she later became, or maybe she was already because I was already commissioner, the administrator for the PDGA, and she did an amazing job. PDGA was kind of struggling at that time, so I mean, I wanted to do everything I could, so I became commissioner. I was running the world championships, or running national doubles, and of course, World's Biggest was going by then. We had just got a start on Millennium, and that was just whatever we can do to keep this thing moving forward.
Oh yeah.
So
You've consecrated your life and energy to the whole development and promotion of the sport. It's amazing to see.
And if the back-to-back worlds and the World's Biggest were the bread, here's the meat. Let's talk about national doubles.
National doubles.
I mean, we've said it. I can't tell you how many episodes we've already talked about this being like, especially like starting as early as the VPO. Everybody started asking, who you going to Round Rock with? They didn't even say national doubles. They didn't. It was just who you going to Round Rock with, And I mean, we talked about it with Chris the other night too, And I know that stretched up into that part of the world, but it was rampant throughout Texas. I mean, that was obviously one of the more successful ideas you had. Maybe not the most, but that's pretty amazing.
No, it was big. The city of Round Rock, and now we're into about 1990, had something called the Round Rock Sports Fest, and so their goal was to bring people into town for all kinds of different events. And disc golf got on their radar. They obviously had a good park for it. And so we ran, I think 1990, the Circular Skies doubles championships. And it went so well that I said, we should make this a national event. And so in 1991, it became the PDJ National Doubles Championships. Meanwhile, pretty much the same thing was happening with World's Biggest. World's Biggest, the first year was just in Austin.
Right.
At Zilker Park, and we had something 356 players or something like that in one day at Zilker Park. Now, when you look at Ledgestone and Emporia and Bowling Green and places that are having thousands, it's obviously a different animal, but 350 plus people in one event and in one day, that was something new. And so after that first year, it was the same thing. We said this should be a worldwide event. So PDJ National Doubles, which eventually became PDJ World Doubles. The PDJ asked me if we'd be okay changing the name, and said, look, it's whatever you guys want. So, but it was one of the top 10 payouts every year. It was a big deal, and we had people from all over the country now, especially on the pro side. It was really overwhelmingly Texas and Oklahoma on the amateur side, unfortunately. But it was early in the year. I remember having a conversation with Elaine one year, trying to get her to come down, and she said, I don't have time to practice. Right? We're still in snow up here, eh? And she didn't. I don't recall Elaine actually saying "a." I just whenever I talk about Toronto, I just like or Prince Edward Island. I just
always well observed.
Actually, I've worked in 4 provinces in Canada now. I was very disappointed to learn that they don't all say "a" typically. So
was Quebec one of those provinces you went to?
Well, BC, I was working in Saskatchewan last year, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick.
Okay.
So I haven't actually done Ontario yet. So we need to take care of that and some of those central ones. But
we'd love to have you up here and design a world-class course.
I would,
for sure.
I would love to do that. Still time. So, so we Climo, Greenwell, Wise Cup, Valencia.
It was a who's who.
Stokely, obviously, Brad Hammock was a Stokely partner, and Dunapace, Farron's, pretty much everybody except, it didn't really work for some of the northern players, as Elaine helped me understand. But those were great years. And there were so many things that hadn't been done in tournaments before. We actually had a live scoreboard, right? I had people around the course with walkie-talkies every 4 or 5 holes. And I know the USDGC wound up doing that on a much bigger scale later, but they would, ask the players for their scorecard, take a look at it, tell me their scores, and we would update it on a live metal leaderboard with magnetic numbers.
That's
nice.
Because nobody could find their smartphones. So,
man, what were we thinking back then?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about Old Settlers Park there. I know we might not be able to get into this whole section, but the great disc golf holes of the world that made it on to that selection. That I think it was hole 4 from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you design that course, or does it just naturally lend itself to your particular diabolical intentions?
Did I design the course?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because
Absolutely.
you made, obviously people want to play a big tournament, but they want to play an amazing course too to start the year, and that was the side draw as well, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, of course we wanted to do the best we could with the course. I mean, don't get me started. There are some big events. Well, there've always been big events on courses that were not necessarily among the top courses in the world, because historically you had to have money and sponsorship and staff, right? I mean, before you could even get in the conversation. Now it's a different world where there can be money and sponsorship and staff in hundreds of places, or at least close to that. And now the DGPT and the PDJ can start bringing course quality as one of the more prominent criteria. But that course, you know, I'm sure Brian will remember. I mean, it was huge. It was
Oh, it was a
ungodly
monster.
huge.
Yeah.
And about 2 years ago, I went back and looked at the scorecard, and it was par 63, and I'm like, no, it had to be more than that. But you know, par 63 didn't happen back then.
Right.
And
That was
you
definitely
know,
one of the few places we saw it back then, for sure.
yeah, and really, I got some pushback from people prominent in disc golf who thought par fours, par fives, not where we want to go. You know, disc golf
Wow.
should be short, deuceable holes. That's what's going to help us grow. So I was dead set on par fours and par fives, and I think, you know, I've been vindicated over the years. But that was also a very open course. And so that was not, that was a shock to some people. And I won't use the name, but I will never forget, Hall of Fame disc golfer from the East Coast, great guy. First time he came to Round Rock, he was about out of breath in the middle of the last round. And he said, I didn't have any idea that people even played disc golf this way. Because he came from a place where the
Oh, you got to
fairways
share
were,
the name. Come on.
yeah, well, off
Okay.
there. Where the fair, you know, he came from a part of the country where the fairways were all this wide, and you know, 270 was a big hole back then. So
Right.
it was a different animal. But
I tell you,
it's-
for me personally, when as I was coming up in the game, 95, 96, 97, one of my personal quests was kind of, I guess, before I even knew what the phrase bucket list was to try to play each and every one of those great disc golf holes. Now, of course,
oh wow,
wasn't able to get over to Europe to play any of those, but I got to play, and Laurel Springs had closed by the time I had started playing seriously in 96. But I got to play Redstone Arsenal, Della Viega, VA Barry, Addison Oaks, Ponderosa, La Mirada, and Old Settlers Park. And it was like, honestly, for me, it was like the Stations of the Cross on the pilgrimage for me.
wow. I you know, I've never heard anybody say that. That's
Really?
wonderful.
Okay.
That's very touching. Wow, very cool.
So unfortunately, we are going to have to come to a close soon. But before we do, we want to just jump right into the 20 questions. We do have stuff that we haven't been able to talk about, and we hope to be able to touch on when we do have UND later in the winter when we talk in Design Week. But definitely, before we do get into 20 questions, we do have to note you are the co-founder of Millennium, which certainly you've had your fingerprints all over the revolutionary aspect of any kind of change in the game, and this was one of them. You guys brought a new form of plastic to the planet that nobody had seen before, and the consistency.
Right, that's mostly true. You know, we haven't told this story a lot, but the truth is that, you know, Discraft put out the Cyclone, and you know, this was back in the days when every new disc that came out, right, everybody had to have it.
For
So
sure.
Gazelle, Cheetah, Hammer, Scorpion, you know, whatever it was. And Cyclone was the big thing for a while. Then whatever Innova disc came after that, X-Clone, and then another Innova, blah, blah, blah. But the Cyclone was a more durable material.
Definitely.
And I said, well, hang on, man, this is a thing. And they last longer. And that was the whole point of Millennium, was let's make a premium plastic brand. And people, you know, once they understand that the grip is better and the durability is better, you know, it's going to cost more to make, and it's going to cost more for the end consumer, but it's going to be worth it. So the super soft plastic and the, you know, the base Millennium plastic, which was a step above DX, and then, you know, the quantum plastic, and then the Sirius plastic. That was, we were, and it was Harold and I at the time. Eventually Harold bowed out, and Dee took over his half. But it was kind of yeah, revolutionary at the time. And we, you know, had a good partnership with Innova at the time, and The Polaris was huge in its day, and then the JLS, the Super Soft, became a staple. And those were pretty proud of what we were able to do with Millennium.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, I wish I had the photo queued up here, but the cover of the Disc Golf World News with one of the Swedes, I don't know if it was a Schallstrom or an Ericsson.
No, Thomas Ekstrom, I think.
Ekstrom, okay. You know what I'm talking about? He's wearing the Millennium
Yes,
shirt.
because I just saw it a couple hours ago when I was doing my research.
Yeah.
And yes, Thomas Ekstrom with the Millennium shirt. Tomas, real quick, because I know we're short on time. Tomas and Svante, the only two players who were sponsored by Millennium. We didn't think player sponsorships, for the value at the time was our best marketing strategy. But these two guys from Sweden who were amazing, they loved Millennium. Please sponsor us. So Harold and I said, okay, we're just going to sponsor two guys from Sweden. That's it. And of course, they became the founders of Latitude 64. And
Right.
Paul, just real quick, I found this article, and I don't remember any of this. The PDJ has created an amateur committee and named competition director Mark Ellis as committee chair. The committee has taken on these members. First on the list, Paul Bellier, Toronto. I was also on that list. I'm sorry, I don't remember the amateur committee from 1997, but I dug deep into your past, my
There
friend.
you go.
Nice.
You know
Well,
what, just for your future reference, if you are looking through some of those old publications, I wrote an early story about my trip to Japan. I went to Japan in the spring of '97, and I published probably in the summer or the fall of '97.
And anybody who wants to go back and look at some of those old magazines, it's whether you were there or not, reading that stuff and those people and where the sport was at that time, it is mind blowing.
Yeah,
And they're all available online.
that's
oh,
that's
wow,
why
that's cool. I didn't know that.
the World Flying Disc Museum is doing a great job too with the preservation of all that stuff. So let's just jump. We're going to wrap this up here, but before we do, we have the 20 questions.
All right.
For you, John, you've obviously TD'd and MC'd, which we haven't talked about, and maybe people don't know about, but you've got quite a legendary career as an MC for a lot of major freestyle events. But as a player, in your long history of playing in any of the disc sports, what event stands out the most to you in the landscape of your past?
You mean event as in tournament?
As a
or
as a participant.
As a
Not as a-
participant.
Oh, well, I mean, you showed the video. 84 World Freestyle Championships. We practiced so hard for that. I felt like, we were innovating in choreography and music and nailed it. So, and won the World Championship. So doesn't get it any better than that in my career as far as disc events.
All right, that's a great answer. So what events as a promoter or organizer or MC stand out for you? What event, excuse me, not events, in terms of like, what was the top thing, like looking back, where was the pinnacle for you?
I'm not really good at this kind of question because I'll say something and then an hour later somebody will say, what about that? And I'm like, oh yeah. But I'll go with 94 PDJ Pro Worlds in Port Arthur.
I had a feeling that would be one of those.
Yeah, it was part of the Climo era, and one of those years was at that point the greatest 9 holes ever played by Mike Randolph.
That was 95.
Was that 95?
Because of work. I was going to go and play the 150 World Championship and be there for that, but I was just getting into the entertainment business in 94, like really getting into it in 94, 95, and I had to take the work. And
Well,
plus that was kind of an am.
Yeah, that was amazing. And are you going to ask me the craziest shot I ever saw? Because that's going to be the same.
Please,
Same answer.
Go
Is that-
ahead, spit it out.
Yeah,
Randolph out of the house, out of the barn.
As Mike Randolph was playing Lights Out and closing in on Climo, which was not possible, but he was doing it. And all of a sudden, I get a call that Ken is on top of the roof of a shed that we didn't even know was there. It was off in the woods. I mean, and I'd spent hundreds of hours on this island designing these courses. I never saw it, but he somehow, you know, threw over the trees and didn't make it. And he's landing on the roof. And I'm like, it's not in the rule book. So I can't say, you know, it's 2 meters. So we'll let him play it underneath. And it is like an old golf joke, right? Open the door of the maintenance shed, and he took one look at it. I mean, and the door is probably pushing 100 feet from him, and you can't see the basket. It's up the hill to the right. And he just looked at it and then said, okay, and threw this backhand roller, and we saw it disappear up the hill, dead quiet. And then all of a sudden the crowd goes crazy. And he had rolled it right up to the basket. I mean, he could have missed the door, and Mike Randolph's world champion. And I mean, but unbelievable shot.
He's got an ability with a round plastic object that nobody else on the planet does. I mean, I've seen him figure out everything. He'll figure out how to snap a Pringles lid. One time we were at the Great Lakes Open swimming in the pool, and he figured out how to snap a Pringles lid and make it fly like a mini. I mean,
Wow.
he's a wizard.
He's the champ. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say that we don't know that you've already won a major tournament or the Worlds with Joey Houck and Skippy Jammer, but who would be your ideal freestyle dream co-op team be?
I think I lived that dream, actually.
There you go.
I'm doing it. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm doing a course in Florida now, St. Johns County, St. Augustine, and Jens Velasquez and his wonderful wife Anne live there. So we've spent a lot of time with them. Dee and I have probably spent more time with them than we have with any other couple anywhere else in the country, including Austin, the last couple of years. And Jens and his brother Erwin were my freestyle heroes. The first time I saw them in person, probably 1979 at Toronto Island, and literally lost my breath. They were world champions 3-4 years before I even started playing, and they were just incredible. And I was watching them going, I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I always dreamed that someday I could be an honorary Velasquez brother. And 1 year at the National Frisbee Festival at the mall in DC, they were there, and we did a co-op routine together. Actually found a picture of it a couple months ago. And so, yeah, Jens and Erwin and John, that's my dream co-op team, and it actually happened. So
that's awesome.
That is awesome. What's your favorite freestyle move?
I'm going to go with Free Willy. There were a few moves that I did that nobody else did. I don't know why, because they were so awesome. Somebody else should have picked them up. But Free Willy is 2 spins under the leg pull, and then an Arvon swoop under your leg, and then land on your side and get it inverted. And Chuck Richard, I kind of flubbed the move once, and I think it was indoors at Jacksonville tournament, and landed kind of hard on the surface. And Chuck Richard yelled out, "Free Willy!" So I guess he was comparing me to a whale, but that's so all of a sudden that move had a name, and there you go.
Yeah, just for the record, the orca is the most feared and most intelligent of the apex predators. So if you're going to be compared to a whale, why not go?
Well, then I should thank him. It was clearly meant as a compliment.
Obviously. Hey, can you still pull that move off?
Oh my God, give me about 2 weeks.
And lots of rub A535.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, so Desert Island. We've asked this question in various forms before, and turns out not everybody reads books to the same degree that I do. So if you got to go to the desert island, you got to bring something with you. Are you bringing books, movies, or sports equipment?
All books.
Okay, so
Multiple books?
Any book in particular, or any books in particular?
I would bring Ulysses by James Joyce. I
Nice.
actually did a full semester on that book. And, for people who aren't familiar with it, you read it with two reference books with you, so that explains what the heck you're reading. And I actually wrote a paper about it that someone from another college wanted to publish in their college magazine, which was great, but then they didn't publish it because of a quotation I had taken from the book that they found to be a little off color. It wasn't anything I said. So it occurs to me that probably in 1982, I was a very early victim of cancel culture. I never looked at it that way.
You cast a shadow everywhere, don't you?
Yes.
So sports teams, do you have you pull for any colleges? Any college teams, any of that matter to you?
Never was a big college guy for whatever reason, but we live in Austin, so hook 'em horns. But you know my primary sports allegiance. And that
The
is
Bills?
the Buffalo Bills. To this day, and enough time has passed that I'll be in situations where I will say to somebody younger, I'm a Bills fan, and they're like, Bills, are they any good? I'm like, only team in NFL history to win their conference 4 years in a row. It's never been done. And they go, oh, and then some jerk in the back goes, and they lost all 4 Super Bowls. So anyway, I love my team. Never gonna give them up. So
I have to admit to rewriting multiple times the intro, and I had to strike out just out of due deference any references to wide right. So
thank you. Of course, you had to find a way to bring it into the conversation, but
so I guess that answers the question. Favorite sport to watch is football. Is that it?
You don't care about the
favorites.
NBA or anything else? MLB,
Um,
NHL, soccer?
You know what? Every World's Biggest was such a big job, and I was in the beginning pretty much solo, shipping 15 to 20,000 discs and T-shirts all over the world, and promoting the event and running it locally. It was a huge job. I mean, I think one year I did 8 80-hour consecutive weeks, and the next year I did 10. I don't know why. I thought that was a cool record to track. And I know a lot of people do 80-hour weeks their whole lives. So, but World's Biggest would always happen right around the time of the NFL playoffs. I'm sorry, NBA playoffs. So, man, you would 2 days after World's Biggest on, you would find me on my couch watching NBA playoffs. Popeye's chicken was one of my favorite meals. And every year I hurt my back. And it wasn't from all the boxes and everything. I think it was just from sitting on the couch for days at a time. But yeah, I used to love to watch the NBA, but and I was always a huge baseball fan my whole life. Not a big TV fan, but yeah, I'll go with football.
Nice.
So nothing from the NHL, nothing from soccer.
No, never a big fan of either one of those. When the Buffalo Sabres were an expansion team, the only rink in town that they could practice was at my high school. So I would see so I would see him going from the rink to the locker rooms most days.
Wow.
While I was in class, but for whatever reason, hockey just never really appealed to me.
All right.
And I did watch Ted Lasso. So, soccer's okay now. And when I was in India, when Dee and I went to India, I learned to appreciate cricket.
Okay.
And cricket is actually kind of cool once you understand it. So
you got to get beyond the veil of secrecy, because cricket is an impenetrable mystery for those of us on the outside.
Oh, yeah, totally. But once you have somebody explain it to you and you watch it and you go, oh yeah, okay. Kind of cool. Yep.
All right, Mace.
So we already covered that one. What about other sports that other than disc golf, your favorite sport to play?
Historically, the baseball.
Okay, nice.
Enjoyed, right, we're not including disc sports.
Right.
No,
Okay, yeah, baseball all my life, through high school, was not good enough to play college ball at Indiana University. But I always loved baseball. I've always enjoyed playing basketball. But yeah, baseball been, very, very good to me.
So you've already mentioned Popeyes, but do you have a favorite snack that you like to indulge in?
Snack, not meal.
Right.
Well, Paul, I'm gonna go with the, Slim Fast, keto bars, or
Right.
the little fat bombs. High protein, very satisfying, 200 calories, back in business, or,
Nice.
adult candy bar. But it's
Adult.
completely justified and healthful because it's protein.
There you go. There you go.
so at any point during your playing career, did you have a specific meal that you really wanted to have, like before you did the freestyle and the world championship or anything like that? Was there something that you tried to
I
try to
think
get
back
yourself to
in,
eat?
yeah, not specifically, but back in those days, the conventional wisdom was carbo loading was a big thing, right? Turns out it was more of a thing for long distance runners, but we were like, "No, another excuse for eating pizza. How can you turn that down?"
Can't go wrong, right?
Okay. Your birthday wish meal. It's your birthday tomorrow. What do you have?
Oh my goodness. Hey, well, I actually, we travel a lot and people have busy lives. I don't get to see my Austin friends a whole lot. But last year I said, dang it, I'm spending time with my friends. And so I put out the word, come join us at Conan's Pizza. Deep dish veggie pizza plus jalapenos. I mean, that is literally my birthday meal.
Nice.
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 How do you take your coffee?
You can't see inside the cup, but milk, no sugar.
Milk, no sugar. Okay, so we're going to talk about your travel, not just your travel experience, but in your this could also be a bucket list, but within Texas, what's your favorite destination to go to
Favorite destination
inside of Texas?
inside of Texas. For any reason or for disc
Yeah,
golf?
any reason.
Anyways,
Oh,
Ooh,
we did say disc golf.
we did say disc golf.
no, we said outside of disc golf.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, we did. Also.
I'm sorry. Outside of disc golf. Wow. Favorite destination inside Texas, no disc golf. Should have prepped me for this one.
I think we got a stumper here.
You know what? I haven't actually been there, but I've been very close, and Dee loves this place, and she's gone multiple times over the years. And we got down to the neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to actually getting inside of Big Bend and spending time there.
Okay.
I know it's important to her, and she raves about it. So, and like I said, we were down in that area earlier this year, so I got to see what the area is like, even though we didn't go into the actual park. But I'll say Big Bend.
All right. Hopefully this one isn't as hard as the last one. What about in the United States? Similar destination in the United States. Is there some place that you really, really like to go to in the US? And you know where the next one's coming, so think hard.
Well, I like to go to Buffalo. I like to go back and see where I grew up, and walk the same route that I used to walk to school.
Nice.
And that's it's just special meaning for me.
Do you
And
still
by the
have
way,
family up there?
I have cousins, and my aunt is still there. My mom lived there forever and ever up until about 3-4 years ago. She moved in with my sister in Philadelphia, but for for all of the 80s and into the 90s. Every Christmas, all 5 of us would make it back to Buffalo for Christmas. It was great. As time went on and there were, spouses and kids, it became harder, but we would all go back to Buffalo every Christmas and spend time with Mom. And since I was self-employed, I was generally able to go for 2-3 weeks, and that was great. So, and one little side note, since we were talking about meals, I have been so blessed. I grew up in Buffalo when chicken wings were invented. So I got to experience them very early on, watch them spread across the country. When I moved to Austin, one of the first people I met was Sonny Falcone, the guy who invented fajitas. And
Oh, wow.
that changed. I mean, I was eating fajitas probably 6 days a week, and watched them spread across the country. So
you've been kind of at the ground zero for culinary explosions.
yes, and right, and interesting in both cases, it was a part of the chicken that previously used to get thrown out, and it was a cut of the beef that used to mostly get tossed out. So yeah, fun fact. Wasting time.
So we're going to go now on the global stage. Global is the place that you've been for this sports, but any favorite place in the world out there, or bucket list place you want to go?
I don't have a real travel bucket list. I went to Italy with my mother and my sister probably pushing 20 years ago. And the most amazing thing I've seen, which, as far as something that's man-made, that I have a hard time imagining anything would surpass, is the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. I would love to go back there, and that's become kind of an inspiration for me, right? I mean, at what point, as a course designer, will I get an opportunity to kind of do my Sistine Chapel? So, try to do the best I can with every property, but my best work is still out in front of me. But that Sistine Chapel is breathtaking.
Well, you keep coming up with some masterpieces. We're gonna have to start calling you Houckleangelo.
I appreciate that, and I'm sorry. I have to say, Harmony Bands, the guy who did all the rock work there, all the retaining walls and the creek crossings, his name is Rick Richardson, and his nickname during that project was Rickelangelo. So
nice.
he did fantastic work there. Fantastic work.
What's your favorite musical genre?
Oh, straight up bebop jazz.
Nice. I do have to take one little digression here. I went to visit you. I think it was the first time I met you. 96. I went to your warehouse space, Circular Productions, and I remember just going through all your discs. That's where I found out about you. You had called Thomas Bertrand to get set up around with me with him, because I don't think Pleasure Island was in the ground, or at least it was overgrown, and you needed a guide to go and play some. But I remember this was right around the time that the Moray had debuted.
Oh, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie.
I remember pulling out, flipping through and looking at it and going, "Hey, John, what is a Moray?" And you didn't even miss a beat. You just started singing. I'm like, "Is he singing? What?"
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was stealing your punchline, but yeah, that was too.
So okay, nerd alert. What's your geek freak? What's your secret nerd passion?
My nerd penchant?
Passion.
Nerd passion. Man, never got into video games. I have a math major. I loved higher math. That's pretty geeky. I mean, obviously I don't spend time on it these days, but I did do some tutoring a few years ago, found out that I was able to derive the quadratic equation on my own, which was a nice surprise after all those years. So Yeah, I'm a little bit of a math geek, I guess.
I don't know
Nice.
anything about what you just said.
Yeah. You did the quadratic equation in school. You may not
I forgot
remember.
about it. Just like the Columbia River Gorge. I got reminded of that this summer, but I'm sure I don't know about that equation. So you just answered my next question. So
Go ahead and take the next one.
the favorite cartoon from the 70s?
Do you
A
remember watching?
TV cartoon
Yeah.
Sure.
or like a comic strip? Does that count?
It could be a comic strip.
Be a comic strip. Never a huge cartoon guy, but I mean Sunday funnies were always big. But I'll go with Peanuts.
Okay. So last question. I think you've already given us a question or the answer, but we already have it here, so we're getting paid by the word anyways. Books or film?
Ooh. These days, I'm sad to say books take too much time. Audiobooks, yes, I'd say so. These days, film for sure. But over the course of my lifetime, and if I had time, I think I'd go books. Yeah, I have an English major too, by the way.
That's
So
right. Double
gotta
major.
gotta give some props to my the other half of my degree.
Nice. Well, the quadratic angle and Ulysses, I mean, that's the golden ratio in both dimensions right there. So, but listen, John, we can't thank you enough for taking this time to talk with us and to break down some of the old stories. And you're obviously legendary as a course designer, and that's a whole other world to talk about. But we hope that you had some fun talking about some stuff that you probably don't get to talk about too often.
Oh my God, I loved it. You know, 2-3 hours worth of other stories went through my head as we did. It's really been a blast. I want to thank you guys, and really looking forward to coming back and doing that with Dee. You know, none of what we do and none of what we've done the last 15 years would be possible without her. She is an unsung and unrecognized major moving force in disc golf these days. So I appreciate you guys wanting to have her on too, and we'll really look forward to coming back. It was great, and Paul, my condolences.
Thank you. Appreciate
on,
that.
on the loss of your uncle, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Went by way too quick.
It really did. It's amazing when good times do go by when you're having fun.
Without a doubt. Thanks a lot for stopping by, John. And we'll look forward to talking to you some more. A few of the things that we missed today, we'll cover when we have you back for the design week. And it's, you know, I forgot about your sense of humor. It was great spending some time with you tonight, you know, and those little zingers like the Amore. Like I was just like going, yeah, okay. This is exactly what I expect from you. You know, because I mean, you always had the ability, you know, you're doing your award ceremony and you could pull little anecdotes out and nothing inflammatory, but you definitely had the goods on a lot of people. And you also, one of the things that Leva pointed out to me long before I ever met you, he's like, when you meet him, and then if you don't meet him again for like 18 months, he's going to remember your name. It might take him a minute or two. And I saw you go through that with several people, but I also saw tonight where you were just pulling names out of your memory. So,
well, yeah, these days it's good days and bad days, and people say that to me all the time, and I regret that I got that reputation, because I was a lot better at it 20 years ago than I am today. Actually, I made that mistake when we went to India the year after we got married. Dee and I went to India, and so I had a long flight to memorize all these names, you know, names that I had never heard before, so that when we got there, I was able to say, you know, Tanuja and Pradeep and Anil, and went around the room and got everybody's name right. But it, you know, it comes at a price, because 6 months later, somebody comes to America and shows up at the door and says, "Hi, what's my name?" I'm like, was 6 months ago. Give me a break. So, and yes, and people still walk up to me today after, disc golfers after 20 years expect me to remember their name, and they're disappointed when I'm not. So I apologize to all of them. Your names are all very important. You're all very important people, but Brian and Paul, thank you so much. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Thanks
It's
for
been great
being
to
a
see
part,
you.
and
Yeah.
look forward to crossing paths with you again sometime soon.
And
I
until
look-
we see you again online, I hope to see you again down the road sometime, but be well, continue to do what you do. Spread the love, spread the light. You're doing an amazing job every day.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
All
Okay.
right, thanks everybody. Have a good evening.
Take care. God bless.
Good
Bye-bye.
times.
Good time.